moment my heart shattered wasn't dramatic. There was no thunder, no ominous music. Just the ordinary crunch of gravel under my tires as I pulled into the driveway of my ranch house outside Austin, exhausted from a 10-hour work marathon debugging a client's interface. Then I saw it. Or rather, I saw where it used to be. My Aunt Alice's rose garden, 200 square feet of antique heritage roses, bourbon roses, and climbing Cecil Brunner that had taken her 30 years to cultivate was gone, erased. In its place was a flattened patch of brown dirt, smooth as a putting green, with industrial rolls of artificial turf stacked at the edge, like oversized carpet samples. A small bulldozer sat nearby, its bucket still caked with soil and what looked like shredded roots. I sat frozen in my car, hands still gripping the steering wheel, staring at the carnage. The garden had been right there this morning. I had passed it on my way out, noted the early blooms on the Madame Isaac Pereire. Now there was just nothing. My vision tunneled. I could not breathe. I stumbled out of the car, my laptop bag forgotten on the passenger seat, and walked toward the destruction on legs that didn't feel attached to my body. The air smelled wrong, like diesel and torn earth instead of the faint rose perfume that usually drifted through the yard on spring evenings. "Oh, you are home early." My father's voice cut through my shock like a hacksaw. "What do you think? Pretty impressive, right?" Arthur Bennett stood near the artificial turf rolls, hands on his hips in that self-satisfied pose he always struck when he thought he had done something clever. At 62, he still had the build of a former high school football player, gone soft, broad shoulders, thick around the middle. With silver hair he kept meticulously groomed. He was wearing khakis and a polo shirt, like he was about to tee off at a country club instead of standing in the ruins of something irreplaceable. "What?" My voice came out strangled. "What did you do?" "Upgraded the property." He gestured grandly at the dirt. "Those thorny bushes were a liability, Skylar. Lowered the property value. Do you know how many times I have gotten scratched just walking past them? Pudding green. Though now that is class. That is the kind of feature that says successful people live here." My mother, Kate, emerged from the house carrying 2 glasses of iced tea. She was 60 but dressed like she was trying to recapture 40 blonde highlights, too much jewelry, a tunic top that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. She had been pretty once, I think, before bitterness had settled into the lines around her mouth. "Skylar, don't just stand there gaping," she said, handing 1 glass to my father. "You could at least thank your father for improving your property. The neighbors are going to be so jealous." "Thank him?" I could barely form words. You destroyed Aunt Alice's garden. That garden was a bunch of weeds that attracted bees and took up valuable space," Dad interrupted, taking a long drink of his tea. "Your aunt had no sense of modern landscaping. This is a ranch property, Skylar. It should look refined, not like some overgrown cottage in the English countryside. Those roses were heritage plants." My hands were shaking. Some of them were over 50 years old. "Aunt Alice is dead," Mom said flatly. "And she left you the house, not her garden hobby. Frankly, I think she would be pleased to see the property being managed by people with actual taste." The workers were already unrolling the turf. One of them glanced at me, saw my face, and quickly looked away. They had been paid to do a job. They did not care that they had just bulldozed my last tangible connection to the only family member who had ever actually loved me. "You had no right." My voice cracked. "This is my house. You had no right to." "No, right?" Dad's face darkened. He took a step toward me, and I instinctively took a step back. "I am your father. I have been living under this roof for 2 years, paying my dues, putting up with your rules and your attitude. I have every right to make improvements that benefit the household. Or, did you forget that you invited us to live here?" That was the spin, wasn't it? I had invited them. The truth was messier, and it sat in my stomach like a stone. 2 years ago, my parents had declared bankruptcy. Dad's investment opportunities, which I had learned meant gambling on penny stocks and lending money to his equally broke friends, had finally caught up with them. They had lost their house in the foreclosure. Mom had called me crying, saying they were going to be homeless, that Dad's knee was too bad for him to work anymore, that they just needed somewhere to stay for maybe 3 months. Tops, while they figured things out. And I, like an idiot, had said yes. Aunt Alice had died 8 months before that, leaving me her custom brick ranch house on 3 acres of Texas hill country. The property was worth over $1 million, a ridiculous windfall for a 28-year-old UX designer who had been living in a cramped apartment in downtown Austin. The property taxes alone were $25,000 a year, but I had been managing. Remote work paid well, and I had been careful. When my parents asked to stay temporarily, I had convinced myself it was the right thing to do. Filial duty, family obligation, all those things that had been drilled into me since childhood. 3 months became 6. 6 became a year. Now it was 2 years, and they had completely taken over. They had moved into the master wing, the entire east side of the house, with its spa bathroom and private patio, claiming Dad's bad knee meant he could not handle stairs. Never mind that my home office was upstairs, and I had to climb those stairs a dozen times a day. Never mind that I had watched Dad take those same stairs just fine when he wanted to raid the storage closet for my aunt's vintage bourbon. They contributed exactly $0 to household expenses. No groceries, no utilities, no property tax. When I had tried to bring it up, delicately, Mom had cried and said I was punishing them for being poor, and Dad had gone silent and cold for 3 days until I apologized. They treated the house like it was theirs. They threw parties. They rearranged furniture. They criticized my decorating choices, my cooking, the friends I invited over, and I had let them. Because I was weak. Because I did not know how to say no. Because some broken part of me still believed that if I was just good enough, patient enough, generous enough, they might finally act like parents, instead of parasites. But this was different. The rose garden wasn't just plants. It was Aunt Alice's legacy. It was the place I had spent summers as a kid, helping her prune and mulch, listening to her stories about each variety, the Madame Hardy she had gotten from a nursery in France, the Reine de Violette, that had survived the freeze of '89, the climbing Don Juan, that covered the arbor where she had scattered my uncle's ashes. It was the only place on the property that still felt like hers, like mine, and they had bulldozed it to install a freaking golf course. I want it put back, I said, and my voice came out harder than I had ever heard it. I want you to call these workers off, return the turf, and figure out how to restore what you destroyed. Dad actually laughed. Put it back? Skylar, those plants are in a dumpster halfway to the landfill by now. What is done is done. Then you can replace them. There are heritage rose nurseries. You can. I am not spending a dime on those thorny death traps, Dad said. He set his tea glass down on the patio table with a decisive thunk. The pudding green is happening. The turf is already paid for your credit card, by the way, since you are the one with the account access. You are welcome. The ground tilted under my feet. You used my credit card? It is a household expense, Mom said, like this was obvious. The card you gave us for emergencies. A pudding green is not an emergency. Don't you raise your voice at your mother? Dad snapped. His hand shot out and grabbed my upper arm, fingers digging in hard enough to bruise. We have put up with your attitude for 2 years, young lady. You will show some respect, or what? The words burst out of me before I could stop them. You will hit me? You will throw me out of my own house? For a second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Not shame, something colder. Calculation. Then he released my arm and stepped back, forcing a smile. Nobody is hitting anybody. You are being dramatic. This is a good thing, Skylar. Once the green is installed, I will finally have somewhere to practice my short game. Maybe you could learn to play. We could do it together. Father-daughter bonding. I looked at him, really looked at him, at the fake warmth in his expression that didn't reach his eyes, at Mom hovering behind him, already mentally redrafting the narrative where I was the ungrateful daughter throwing a tantrum over a few flowers. Something in me, something that had been bending for 2 years under the weight of their entitlement, finally snapped. Not broke, snapped. Like a bowstring pulled too tight, releasing all that stored tension in one sharp moment of clarity. Get off my property, I said quietly. Dad blinked. What? I said get off my property. Both of you. Get out of my house. Mom's eyes went wide. Skylar, you don't mean... I mean exactly what I said. My voice was steady now, cold and clear. You have overstayed your welcome by 2 years. You have taken advantage of my generosity at every turn. And now you have destroyed the one thing in this house that actually mattered to me. And you are standing there acting like I am the problem. So, get out. Dad's face went red. Now you listen here. No, you listen. I pulled my arm free from where his fingers had left white marks on my skin. This is my house. My name on the deed. My property taxes keeping the lights on. And I want you gone. For a heartbeat, I thought he might actually leave, might grab Mom and storm off in a huff and give me the gift of an easy exit. Instead, he smiled. It was the kind of smile a cat gives a cornered mouse. No, he said simply. Excuse me? I said no. He picked up his tea again, took a leisurely sip. We are not leaving. This is our home now. You invited us. We are established residents with tenant rights. If you want us gone, you will have to evict us, and good luck with that. Do you know how long an eviction takes in Texas, especially for elderly tenants with medical conditions? He tapped his knee. My lawyer says we have got a strong case for hardship exemption. The world tilted again. Your lawyer? Did you think we were stupid? Mom chimed in, saccharine sweet. We have been consulting with an attorney for months, Skylar. You cannot just throw us out on the street. That is illegal. They had been planning this, consulting lawyers, establishing residency rights, while I paid for their food and their electricity and their damn pudding green. I had thought I was being kind. Turns out I had been played. Dad turned back to the workers. Gentlemen, let's get that turf laid. I want to practice my stroke before sunset. I stood there, alone in the yard, watching them install artificial grass over the grave of my aunt's roses. For the first time in my life, I understood what real hatred felt like, but I did not cry. Not yet. I walked back to my car, grabbed my laptop bag, and went inside, up the stairs to my office. I closed the door, locked it, and sat down at my desk. Then, and only then, did I let myself fall apart. I allowed myself exactly 10 minutes of grief before the survival instinct kicked in. Then I washed my face, drank a glass of water, and got back to work. Work was the one thing I could control. My design portfolio, my client relationships, my income, those were mine. My parents could not touch them, or so I thought. The presentation was scheduled for 2 p.m. Final pitch for a major healthcare app redesign, 6 months of work, culminating in 1 hour-long Zoom call with the executive team. If they signed off, I would invoice $45,000. Enough to cover the property taxes and put some breathing room back in my savings account after 2 years of supporting 3 people on one income. I spent the morning rehearsing, triple-checked my slides, made sure my lighting was good, my background professional, my internet connection stable. I even put a note on my office door. Important client call 2 to 3 p.m. Do not disturb. At 1:55, I logged into Zoom, muted myself, and waited for the clients to join. By 2:05, all 8 executives were on the call. I unmuted, smiled professionally, and launched into my presentation. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for taking the time today. I am excited to walk you through the final UX architecture for the patient portal redesign. I was 15 minutes in, right in the middle of explaining the medication reminder flow, when my office door banged open. I jumped, fumbling to hit mute, but my father's voice was already booming through my speakers. Telling you, Skylar has got the best setup in the whole house. Look at this view. A group of people filed into my office behind him, 5 or 6 of them, all around my parents' age, holding cocktail glasses, day drinking. Of course. Dad, I hissed, camera still on, clients staring. I am in the middle of a... Oh, don't mind us, Mom's voice, bright and cheerful. We are just giving the Millers and the Johnsons a tour. Arthur, show them the deck. Excuse me for one moment, I said to the screen, trying to maintain composure. I stood up, walked quickly to the door. I specifically asked you not to interrupt. This is a critical work meeting. Work meeting? Dad scoffed, loud enough for the microphone to catch. You are sitting in your pajamas talking to a computer screen. That is not a real meeting. I am wearing business casual, and this is my job. A real job has an office, he continued, playing to his audience now. I could see the Millers and Johnsons exchanging glances. A real job has a boss who can see when you are slacking off. This remote work nonsense is just an excuse to... Please leave, I said, fighting to keep my voice level. We can discuss this after 3 p.m. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw my mistake. I had contradicted him in front of his friends, Challenged his authority in front of an audience. His face went dark. You dare? His voice dropped to something dangerous. You dare tell me what to do in my own home? It is not your, oh. His hand shot out and shoved my shoulder, hard. I stumbled backward, off balance, and my hip slammed into the desk edge with a burst of pain that made me gasp. My desk chair rolled away and I half fell, catching myself on the desk, my hand smacking down right next to my keyboard. The Zoom window was still open, camera still on, all 8 clients watching. For a second, nobody moved. The silence was absolute. Then one of the executives, I think it was the CEO, said, "Miss Bennett, is everything all right there?" I looked up at the screen, saw my own face in the little preview window, flushed and shocked. Saw my father in the background, still standing in the doorway, his friends frozen behind him. "I am fine," I managed. "I apologize for the interruption." The screen went black. Not just black, disconnected. All the participant windows vanished. The call ended. "Shit," I whispered. "Well," Dad said behind me, casual as anything. "Looks like your important meeting is over. Come on, everyone. Let me show you the master suite." They filed out like nothing had happened, like they had not just witnessed a grown man shove his daughter during a work call. I stood there, hands shaking, hip throbbing, staring at the empty Zoom screen. My email pinged. Subject: Contract termination, healthcare portal redesign. I did not need to read it. I knew what it said. Something about an unprofessional work environment, something about concerns regarding project stability, something corporate and polite that meant, we saw what we saw, and we do not want any part of it. 6 months of work. $45,000 in projected income. Gone. I pulled up my client roster. The healthcare project had been my anchor, the big contract that let me take on smaller, experimental work. Without it, I had maybe 4 months of operating capital before I would start missing my own bills. 4 months to find new clients in a market where everyone wanted to see your previous work, where reputation was everything, where a terminated contract would raise red flags. I sat down slowly, wincing at the bruise already forming on my hip. The old Skylar, the one from this morning, would have cried again. Would have gone downstairs and tried to explain, tried to make peace, tried to smooth everything over because that is what kept the household functional. But that Skylar had died in the rose garden. This Skylar just felt cold. I did not go downstairs for the rest of the day. I heard my parents and their friends laughing on the patio, heard the clink of glasses, and Dad's booming voice explaining his short game strategy for the putting green that did not exist yet. At 7 p.m., I packed up my laptop and left through the front door, without saying goodbye. I drove to a coffee shop in downtown Austin, found a corner table away from the windows, and tried to figure out how badly I was screwed. The answer: pretty badly. No major client. Bruised hip that hurt every time I shifted in my chair. Parents who had made it clear they would not leave voluntarily, and had apparently lawyered up for a fight I could not afford. My phone rang. Dad, on the caller ID. I almost did not answer. But muscle memory from 2 years of conditioning made me pick up. Skylar. His voice was different now, annoyed, not angry. "Where are you?" "Coffee shop. Working." "Well, get back here. The irrigation system for the putting green is not working right, and the installer already left. I need you to troubleshoot it." Of course he did. Because in addition to being his landlord, his ATM, and his punching bag, I was also apparently his tech support. "I will walk you through it," I said, putting the call on speaker. "What is the error message?" For the next 15 minutes, I patiently guided him through the settings on the irrigation controller. "Press this button. Turn this dial. No, the other direction." "Yes, I am sure. Got it," he finally said. "The zone timer was set wrong. Fixed now." "Great, I will." But I stopped, because I had heard something in my earbuds that made my blood turn to ice. A rustling sound. Then Dad's voice, but not directed at me, directed at someone else. The phone was still on. He had tried to hang up and failed. The buttons on smartphones could be finicky when you had dirty hands from gardening. He had fumbled it, set it down instead of ending the call. I could hear everything. "Amateur job," Dad was saying. I told them I wanted professional-grade equipment, but Skylar's credit limit would not cover it. "At least it is done." Mom's voice closer. "Did she cry about the roses?" Like a baby. You should have seen her face. He laughed. Thought she was going to faint. Good. Maybe now she will understand who is really in charge around here. My hand tightened on my phone. I should hang up. This was eavesdropping. This was... Did you talk to the lawyer again? Mom asked. This morning. He said we are golden. With my knee condition, the court will classify this as medically necessary housing. She can try to evict us, but it will take over a year, and we will get hardship exemptions the whole way. By that point, we will have adverse possession arguments, maybe even claim an ownership stake since we have been maintaining the property. She is stupid enough to let us stay. Mom's voice dripped with satisfaction. And now she has lost that big client. She will be desperate, easier to control. Speaking of which, Dad's voice got sly. Once we get back from Italy, I am changing the lock on that upstairs office. Turn it into my cigar room. She can work from the kitchen table like a normal person. Perfect. And we should talk about refinancing the property. If we can convince her to put our names on the deed for estate planning purposes. One step at a time, Kate. First the Italy trip. Let her pay for that. Prove she is still obedient. Then we tighten the screws. Static. A rustling sound as someone finally picked up the phone. Skylar? You still there? I was frozen. Completely frozen. Skylar? Impatience now. I hung up. For a long moment, I just sat there in the coffee shop, surrounded by the hum of conversation and the hiss of espresso machines, staring at my phone. They did not see me as their daughter. They saw me as a resource. A thing to be exploited. A naive fool who could be manipulated into funding their retirement while they stole my home out from under me. The Italy trip. I had promised to pay for that months ago, back when I had still believed they were struggling. Back when I had thought funding a modest retirement vacation was the kind thing to do for parents who had had such a hard time financially. They were planning to take my money, go party in Europe for 2 weeks, come back and literally lock me out of my own office. And if I tried to fight, the legal system would protect them. Elderly tenants with medical needs. Poor old Arthur with his bad knee. Poor old Kate who had never worked a day in her life and would not know how to survive without someone to leech off. The old Skylar would have felt trapped. The new Skylar felt something else entirely. Clarity. I opened my contacts and scrolled to a name I had not called in 2 years. Roman Thorne, the attorney who had handled Aunt Alice's probate. He answered on the 3rd ring. Skylar? Long time. Roman. My voice came out steady. I need to ask you a legal question. Hypothetically. Hypothetically, he echoed, amused. Shoot. If someone owns a house free and clear, no mortgage, their name alone on the deed, and they have tenants who refuse to leave, does the owner have the right to sell the property? Silence. Then, this is not hypothetical, is it? Does the owner have the right to sell? I repeated. Yes. Roman's voice shifted, became more serious. Property owner always has the right to sell. The occupants become the buyer's problem. It is actually one of the few ways to handle a tenant who has dug in legally. You sell the house, transfer the deed, and the new owner can handle eviction proceedings. But Skylar, standard buyers' families, people looking for a home, they won't touch a place with squatters. It is too much risk. So I am stuck? Not necessarily. There are investors, wholesalers, firms like Lone Star Holdings. They buy distressed properties for cash. They do not care about occupants because they have their own legal teams and security contractors to handle extractions. Extractions? They are brutal, Skylar. They buy as is, usually well below market value, and they clear the property out fast. It is not pretty. I need to sell my house, I said. Fast. And I need the sale to be quiet. Can you get me a number for Lone Star Holdings? How fast? 2 weeks. He whistled low. That is ambitious, and you will take a hit on the price. They are sharks. Can you help me? I asked again. Another pause. Then, I know a rep there. Stella Wright. She handles their acquisitions in Travis County. I will text you her contact info. But Skylar, be careful. Whatever you are planning. I am not planning anything, I said. I am just taking back what is mine. I hung up before he could respond. Roman's text came through 30 seconds later. Stella Wright's name and number. I did not hesitate. I called immediately. Stella Wright, Lone Star Holdings. a crisp voice answered. Miss Wright, my name is Skylar Bennett. Roman Thorne gave me your number. I have a custom brick ranch on 3 acres in hill country, appraised at $1.1 million. I need to sell it for cash in the next 2 weeks. Occupied? She asked instantly, the professional shark smelling blood. Yes, 2 occupants. No lease. We buy distressed assets at a discount, she stated flatly. If we have to handle an eviction, we offer 70 to 80% of market value. We can close in 10 days. Cash. I did the math. 80% of $1.1 million was $880,000. But, if I pushed, the structure is pristine, new roof, and the occupants will be out of the country on vacation when we close. You won't have to fight them to get in, you will just have to keep them out. Silence on the line. I could practically hear her calculating the reduced risk. If the property is vacant at closing, Stella said slowly, we can do $980,000. But we take possession immediately. We change locks, we secure the perimeter. When they come back, it is our problem, not yours. Deal, I said. I will email the contract tonight. Electronic signature. We will wire the funds upon clear title. I hung up and sat back in my chair, ignoring the ache in my hip. For 2 years, I had been playing defense, accommodating, compromising, trying to be the good daughter. It was time to play offense. I pulled out my laptop and opened my browser, searched, iPhone 15 Pro, in stock, Austin pickup. The Apple Store had them. I could pick one up tonight. Phone B, the Lifeline, the phone that would hold my work email, my banking apps, my 2-factor authentication codes. The phone my parents would never have access to. Phone A, my current iPhone 11 Pro Max, would become the trap, the bait, the thing that made them believe they still had control. I placed the order and stood up, wincing slightly. Tomorrow, the real work would begin. Tonight, I just needed to stop shaking. The next morning, by the time the sun rose following my eavesdropping, the last remnants of my guilt had evaporated. I woke up not with sadness, but with a cold, crystalline clarity. I walked into the kitchen at 7 a.m. to find Dad making coffee like he was the lord of the manor. Mom was at the table, scrolling through her phone. Oh good, you are up? Mom said without looking at me. We need to finalize the Italy arrangements. Arthur wants to upgrade the flights to business class. Coach is terrible for his knee, and I found this absolutely darling hotel in Tuscany. I poured myself coffee, watching the steam rise. I will look at the flight options today. Mom beamed. Wonderful. Oh, and we will need spending money. Maybe $3,000? For dinners and souvenirs. Fine. They both blinked. The fight they were bracing for never came. Really? Mom's eyes narrowed slightly, suspicious of the easy victory. Really? I set down my mug, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. You are right. You deserve a nice vacation. After everything you have been through financially, you should enjoy yourselves. Dad relaxed, satisfied. That is more like it. I knew you would come around. Family takes care of family, Skylar. That is what your aunt would have wanted. Aunt Alice would have set the house on fire before she let these vultures pick over her life's work, but I just nodded. I will book the flights this morning. Later that morning, my phone rang. It was Stella Wright from Lone Star Holdings. We have reviewed the title, she said, businesslike and cold. It is clean. We are ready to move forward. The contract is in your inbox. $980,000 cash. Closing date is set for Friday the 14th. Excellent. Just to reiterate, Miss Bennett, we are buying this as an investment vehicle. The moment funds are wired, our security team takes control of the asset. We do not tolerate trespassing. You are sure the occupants will be gone? They leave for Italy in 48 hours, I confirmed. The house will be empty. Perfect. Sign the papers and we are in business. After hanging up, I sat at my desk. $980,000. Combined with my savings, I would have nearly $1 million. Enough to disappear. Enough to start over. But first, I had to get them on that plane. The next 2 days were a masterclass in deception. I played the submissive daughter perfectly. I upgraded their flights to business class. I booked the 5-star hotel with the vineyard views. I transferred $3,000 to Mom's checking account. I even helped Dad pack his golf clubs he had wanted to bring them, for networking, but Mom vetoed it due to baggage fees. "Leave the clubs home, Arthur," she had commanded. "We are going to wine country, not Street Andrews." He had grumbled but complied, leaving the heavy bag in the garage. I made a mental note. The clubs stay here. The morning of their departure arrived in a pre-dawn haze. I drove them to the airport at 4 a.m. The trunk was packed with 3 huge suitcases for a 2-week trip. At the departure's curb, Mom gave me a perfunctory hug that smelled of expensive perfume. "You be good while we are gone. Keep the house clean." Of course. Dad turned back before wheeling his suitcase through the sliding doors. "Remember," he said, "the putting green needs to be watered twice daily. Don't let the artificial turf dry out. And fix that sprinkler head by the time we get back." "Yes, sir." I kept my head down, voice meek. He patted my shoulder, the same shoulder he had shoved just days ago. "That is my girl." I watched them disappear into the terminal. The moment the automatic doors hissed shut behind them, the submissive mask dropped from my face. I got back in my car, and as I merged onto the highway, a laugh bubbled up from my chest. It wasn't a happy sound. It was dark, sharp, and jagged. I drove home, watching the sky lighten from black to pale gold. By the time I pulled into the driveway, the sun was fully up, casting long shadows across the hated putting green. I pulled out my phone and checked the flight status. Departed. I went inside, made a fresh pot of coffee, and opened my laptop. The email from Stella was waiting. Subject: contract, countersigned, closing initiated. I read it twice. Then I stood up and looked around the house. My house. Not for much longer. The silence that settled over the house the moment their plane took off was profound, as if the walls themselves were finally exhaling. I did not waste a single hour. The very next morning, the moving crew I had hired arrived. I had spent the previous night tagging everything that was mine with blue tape. My bedroom furniture, my office equipment, and the few precious antiques Aunt Alice had left me. "Blue tape goes to the Dallas apartment," I told the crew chief. "Everything else stays for the junk removal team tomorrow." I watched them dismantle my life. My bed frame, my bookshelves, the landscape painting Aunt Alice had loved, all carried out and loaded onto the truck. By noon, my room was empty. By 2 p.m., my office was stripped bare. My phone buzzed continuously with updates from Italy. Mom sent photos of their hotel suite. Dad sent a picture of his business-class meal. They were living it up, completely oblivious that the foundation of their life was being disassembled across the ocean. I replied with enthusiastic emojis, feeding their ego one last time. When the movers left for Dallas, I stayed behind for one final, crucial task. I went into the garage where Dad's golf club sat in the corner. It was an expensive set, tailor-made irons, a Callaway driver, a Scotty Cameron putter housed in a premium leather bag. He loved these clubs more than he loved most people. I unzipped the main cover and pulled the irons out, laying them carefully on the concrete floor. Then, I took the device I had prepared, my old iPhone 11 Pro Max, connected to a brick-sized 50,000 mAh camping power station. I had set the phone to low power mode, disabled data roaming, and turned the ringer volume to the absolute maximum. I wrapped the phone and the battery brick in a layer of bubble wrap to prevent them from rattling, then dropped the package into the deepest well of the golf bag right at the bottom, where the club grips usually rested. I jammed the clubs back in one by one. The shafts locked the device in place, burying it under layers of graphite and steel. Even if someone unzipped every pocket, they would not find it. To get to that phone, Dad would have to dump his entire precious set onto the ground. The ringtone would sound like it was coming from the ghost of the bag itself, muffled, deep, and impossible to locate without complete dismantling. "Perfect," I whispered. The following day, the junk removal crew arrived to clear out everything else. My parents' king-sized bed, their 60-inch TV, Mom's vanity, their clothes, all of it was packed and hauled to a climate-controlled storage unit an hour outside of town. I made sure the golf bag was placed in the very back corner of the unit, buried behind a wall of boxes. I locked the storage unit and drove away. The trap was set. The days that followed were a blur of finality. I hired cleaners to scrub the house until it smelled like lemon and emptiness. I scheduled the utility transfers. I watched the house transform from a home back into a structure vacant, echoing, and ready for new life. On the evening before the closing, as I was unpacking the last box in my new high-rise apartment in Dallas, my phone rang. It was Dad. "Hi, Dad. How is Tuscany?" I asked, putting the call on speaker while I arranged books on my shelf. "Incredible," he said, sounding slightly tipsy. "We are at a vineyard. You can see for miles." "Listen, Skylar, I was just telling your mother. I really wish I had brought my clubs. Saw a guy on the course today with that same putter I have. Made me miss mine." I paused, holding a book in midair. The irony was so thick I could taste it. "Is the bag safe in the garage?" he continued. "No humidity getting to the leather?" I smiled at the empty room. "It is extremely safe, Dad. I made sure it is stored somewhere very secure. It will not be moved until you get back." "Good girl. That set is my pride and joy." "I know, Dad. I know. We will see you in a few days. Love you, kiddo." "Love you too," I said, and ended the call. The final morning arrived with a sky the color of bruised steel. I drove back to Austin one last time. There was no sentimental walkthrough with a nice couple. I met a courier from Lone Star Holdings in the driveway. He didn't even go inside. He just took the keys, handed me a packet of final disclosures, and checked the property off on his iPad. "Assets secured?" he muttered into a Bluetooth headset. "Boarding crews will be here at 1,400 hours. ASIN." Before I left the house for the last time, I stopped at the smart home control panel in the hallway. Fingers flying across the screen, I initiated the ownership transfer protocol. I deleted user, dad and user, mom. I wiped the entry logs. Finally, I disabled the remote notification system. When my parents eventually returned and tried their old code, no alert would come to my phone, no chime would welcome them. Just a cold, red light blinking, access denied. The house was no longer intelligent. For them, it was now just a fortress specifically designed to keep them out. We met at the title company at 1 p.m. The room smelled of stale coffee and printer toner. I signed page after page of legal documents, each signature severing a tie to my past. At 2:51 p.m., my phone buzzed. Wire transfer received. $947,382.19. The money was real. The house was gone. The deed was done. I walked out of the office building and into the blinding Texas afternoon sun. My parents were still in Italy, sleeping off a wine hangover, completely unaware that they were now homeless. I got into my car, turned on the radio, and drove toward the highway. I did not look back. 3 days drifted by in a strange, suspended reality. I knew what was coming, but the waiting was its own form of torture, the good kind, like anticipating the punchline of the world's longest, most expensive joke. I threw myself into work, reached out to old clients, pitched new projects, rebuilt the professional reputation my parents had damaged. The apartment in Dallas became my command center. Coffee at dawn, design work until noon, afternoon meetings via Zoom with my camera on and my background carefully neutral. Nobody needed to know I had just sold my house. Nobody needed to know I was hiding. Then came the 14th day, Judgment Day. I woke up at 6 a.m., too anxious to sleep. Checked the flight status on my laptop. On time. Arrival at Austin Bergstrom at 8:19 p.m. Lone Star Holdings had taken possession of the property 4 days ago. According to Stella, their asset preservation team had already been through. They had secured the perimeter, drained the pool to save on maintenance, and posted signage. I spent the day in a state of hyper-awareness, watching the clock tick toward evening. At 7 p.m., I ordered takeout and barely touched it. At 7:45, I started refreshing the flight tracker obsessively. Landed. 8:19 p.m. They were home. Or rather, they thought they were going home. I imagined them collecting their luggage, tired but happy. Tanned from the Italian sun, full of stories about art and wine and la dolce vita. The line at customs was notoriously long at this hour, and baggage claim would take forever with their oversized suitcases. At 9:45 p.m., I pulled up the home security camera app on my phone, the one connected to the Ring doorbell I had installed last year. I still had admin access, The investment firm hadn't swapped the hardware yet, only the locks. I watched the dark driveway, the empty porch, the house sitting silent under the exterior lights. At 10:05 p.m., headlights appeared. A taxi pulled into the driveway. I watched the grainy footage as both passenger doors opened. My parents climbed out, Dad stretching his back, Mom already directing the driver to help with luggage. They paid. The taxi drove away. Then they were alone in the driveway, surrounded by suitcases, staring at their kingdom. Dad walked to the front door first, pulling out his phone to access the code I had given him 2 years ago. He punched it into the smart lock keypad. Red light. Access denied. He tried again, slower this time. Same code, carefully entered. Red light. Kate, what is the door code? His voice carried through the Ring doorbell's audio, tinny but clear. Same as always. 5283. Your birthday. He tried it a third time. Red light. Access denied. Is your phone acting up? Mom asked, pulling out her own phone. Use mine. She tried. Red light. I watched Dad's face cycle through confusion, annoyance, then the first flicker of fear. Maybe the battery died, Mom said uncertainly. Try the back door. They left their luggage on the front porch, suitcases full of Italian souvenirs and dirty laundry, and walked around the side of the house. I could not see them anymore, but I knew what they would find. All the doors locked, all the codes changed, all their access revoked. A minute later, they reappeared on camera. Dad was on his phone now, pressing it to his ear with increasing agitation. Calling me, calling phone A. In a storage unit an hour away, my old iPhone 11 Pro Max began to ring. The sound would be muffled by the golf bag, distorted by the enclosed space, but it would ring, and ring, and ring. No voicemail picked up. I had disabled that feature. They would just hear it ring endlessly, a phone that was clearly on but mysteriously unanswered. I watched Dad pull the phone from his ear, stare at it, and try again. Ring, ring, ring. On my end, I saw the missed call notification appear on phone B, forwarded from my old number. But I did not answer. Dad tried the back door again, this time rattling the handle aggressively. Then he walked to the large sliding glass door that led from the patio to the living room. He pressed his face to the glass, hands cupped around his eyes to see through the reflection. I saw him go completely still. Then I saw him stagger backward, nearly falling. Kate. His voice had gone thin. Kate, look. Mom hurried over, peered through the glass. The living room was empty. No furniture, no TV, no curtains. Just bare walls and hardwood floors reflecting the exterior lights. What? Mom's voice cracked. What happened to where is all our... Suddenly, the darkness of the driveway was cut by high-beam headlights. A black SUV, unmarked and sleek, pulled up right behind their luggage, blocking the exit. A man stepped out. He wasn't a neighbor. He wasn't a friendly architect. He was wearing a dark suit that looked expensive, and a demeanor that looked lethal. He held a clipboard. Can I help you? The man asked. His voice was not polite. It was the voice of a man who dealt with problems for a living. Dad spun around. Who the hell are you? What are you doing in my driveway? I could ask you the same thing, the man replied, walking forward. He didn't stop until he was uncomfortably close. I am the asset manager for Lone Star Holdings. We own this property, and you are trespassing. Trespassing? Dad sputtered, face going purple. We live here. This is my daughter's house, Skylar Bennett. I am her father. The man didn't blink. He pulled a document from his clipboard and held it up. It was a copy of the deed. Skylar Bennett sold this property to Lone Star Holdings 14 days ago. He stated coldly. The sale is recorded with Travis County. The property was acquired as a distressed asset, delivered vacant. Sold? Mom screamed. That is impossible. We were just here 2 weeks ago. And now you are not, the man said. This is private corporate property. You have no lease. You have no ownership. You are engaging in criminal trespass. But our things... Mom was hysterical now, grabbing Dad's arm. Our furniture, our clothes, everything. It was inside. The property was purchased, as is, vacant ownership. The man recited, bored. Anything left on the premises after closing is considered abandoned property. My crew cleared this unit 4 days ago. You threw away our things? Dad lunged forward, his face contorted with rage. I will sue you. I will sue this whole damn company. The man didn't flinch. He just tapped his earpiece. Dispatch. I have 2 hostiles at the acquisition site. Send local PD for criminal trespass removal. He looked back at Dad. I have a security team 2 minutes out, and the sheriff is on speed dial. You can leave now, voluntarily, or you can leave in the back of a squad car. Your choice. This is fraud, Dad yelled, though his voice was shaking. My daughter wouldn't. Your daughter signed the closing documents electronically and wired the title, the man interrupted. He pulled a business card from his pocket and flicked it toward Dad. It landed on the concrete. Here's the number for our legal department. Do not come back here. If you step foot on this lot again, you will be arrested. He turned to the SUV driver. Get the bags off the porch. Put them on the curb. 2 large men got out of the SUV. Without a word, they walked past my stunned parents, grabbed the expensive Italian suitcases, and marched them down the driveway to the public street, dumping them on the asphalt. You have 5 minutes to vacate the premises, the asset manager said, checking his watch. I watched my parents stand there in the driveway, utterly defeated. The power dynamic had shifted so violently, they couldn't process it. This wasn't a family squabble. This was corporate machinery crushing them. Dad tried calling me again. In the storage unit, my old phone rang and rang and rang. She is not picking up, he whispered, staring at the phone. Arthur. The police. Mom whimpered, looking at the stone-faced men guarding the house. We have to go. Dad grabbed their suitcases from the curb, his movements jerky and desperate. Mom stood frozen until he barked at her to help. Together, they dragged their luggage down the road, away from the house that was now just a line item in an investment portfolio. The Ring camera watched them vanish into the darkness. The asset manager watched them go, then turned and walked back to his SUV. I closed the Ring app and sat back on my couch, hands shaking slightly. It was done. I waited exactly 1 hour. Let them check into whatever hotel they had found. Let them try calling me a dozen more times, hearing that maddening ringtone echoing from somewhere they could not reach. Then I opened my email on Phone B and composed a message. The subject line was simple. Regarding the house. Dear Arthur and Kate. By now you have discovered that the ranch house has been sold. I am sure this comes as a surprise, but I want to assure you that everything was done legally and properly. The property was mine to sell, and I exercised that right. I sold the property to Lone Star Holdings, an investment firm specializing in distressed assets. They are not the kind of people you can manipulate or bully. As you have likely discovered, they have strict policies regarding trespassing. I understand you are probably looking for your belongings. They have been safely moved to a climate-controlled storage unit. The address is Location B address. The access code is Code. Everything you owned is inside Unit D, Row 12. I have paid for 1 year of storage in advance. As for why I did this, I think you know. You bankrupted yourselves through your own poor decisions. I gave you a place to live out of kindness, and you repaid me by taking over my home, contributing nothing financially, and planning to steal my property through legal manipulation. Yes, Arthur, I heard your conversation on the phone, the hot mic incident on the 2nd day of the saga, when you thought you had hung up but hadn't. I heard everything. Your lawyer's advice about squatters' rights. Kate's plan to turn my office into your cigar room, your entire scheme to claim ownership through adverse possession. I have attached the audio recording of that conversation to this email, in case you were wondering if I had proof. You destroyed Aunt Alice's rose garden to build a putting green. You cost me my biggest client of the year by barging into my work meeting. You physically assaulted me on camera. You treated me like a servant in my own home for 2 years. So I sold the house while you were living it up in Italy on my dime. I sold it to a corporation that doesn't care about your stories, and I moved on with my life. Don't bother calling my old number. That phone is inside your golf bag, Arthur, in the storage unit, plugged into a portable power bank. I imagine the ringing has been driving you crazy. You can retrieve it any time, assuming you are willing to dig through all those boxes to find it. This is not a negotiation. This is goodbye. You wanted to use the legal system against me. I used it better. You wanted to take what was mine. I took back my freedom instead. Don't contact me again. I have blocked both your numbers on my new phone. If you show up at my new address, which you do not have and will not find, I will file a restraining order. I am done being your ATM. I am done being your victim. I am done. Consider this the discipline you tried to teach me, reflected right back at you. Skylar. I attached the audio file, the recording I had made of the hot mic incident, their voices clear and damning as they plotted against me. Then I hit send. The email went out into the digital void, arriving on both their phones within seconds. I imagined them reading it in some hotel room, the full scope of their situation finally crystallizing. No house to return to, no daughter to manipulate, no easy path forward, just a storage unit full of their belongings and the consequences of their own greed. My phone buzzed immediately. Text message from an unknown number, probably Dad using the hotel phone or a friend's cell. You ungrateful little snake. After everything we did for you, after we raised you, you owe us everything. I blocked the number without responding. Another text, different number. Mom this time. Skylar, please. You don't understand. We have nowhere to go. We are your parents. You can't just abandon us. Please call us back. We can fix this. We can talk. Blocked. More messages came in over the next hour, from various numbers, friends' phones, probably. Increasingly desperate, then angry, then threatening, then desperate again. I blocked them all. Around midnight, a voicemail appeared on my new phone. I do not know how they got the number, probably from an old contact list or emergency form somewhere, but I listened to it. Dad's voice, slurred from alcohol or exhaustion or both. Skylar, it is your father. We need to talk. This is insane. You can't do this to family. We made mistakes, okay? I admit that. Maybe we pushed too hard. But you are our daughter. We love you. Does not that count for something? Call me back, please. We are at the extended stay on Route 183, room 247. We just need a place to stay while we figure this out. That is all. Just call me. I saved the voicemail, not to respond to it, but as evidence in case they tried to cause legal trouble later. Then I turned off my phone and went to bed. The next morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and 52 text messages, all from numbers I did not recognize. I deleted them all without reading. Then I opened my banking app. The $947,382 was still there, solid and real. I transferred $250,000 to a high-yield savings account. Set aside $150,000 for estimated taxes on the sale. The rest stayed liquid for living expenses and business investment. I had a consultation call at 10 a.m. with a potential new client, a startup needing a complete UX overhaul. I showered, made coffee, set up my laptop in my home office. The call went perfectly. They loved my portfolio. We discussed timeline and budget. By 11 a.m., I had a signed contract for $30,000. After the call, I stood by my floor-to-ceiling windows, looking out at Dallas. The city stretched out below me, full of possibility. Full of people who did not know my history, did not know my parents, did not care about anything except the quality of my work. I was anonymous here, free here. My phone buzzed. Stella Wright. Security team reported the removal. Smooth. House is currently being boarded up for renovation. Pleasure doing business with you, Skylar. I am perfect, I typed back. Thank you for everything. Fresh start. That is exactly what this was. I thought about Aunt Alice, about her rose garden and her kindness and the inheritance she had left me. She had wanted me to have security, to have a beautiful place to build my life. My parents had turned that gift into a prison, so I had burned it down and walked away. And if the fire also burned them? Well, they had lit the match when they destroyed those roses. I spent the rest of the day working, planning, building, sketched out designs for my new client, updated my portfolio website, researched apartments in Dallas that allowed long-term leases. My parents kept calling. I kept blocking. By evening, the calls slowed. Maybe they had finally understood I meant what I said. Maybe they had found a friend to take them in. Maybe they had checked into that extended stay hotel and were trying to figure out their next move. I did not know. I did not care. That night, I ordered expensive takeout sushi from a place I had been wanting to try, poured myself a glass of wine, ate dinner while watching the city lights come on one by one across the Dallas skyline. Somewhere out there, my parents were dealing with the consequences of their actions. Somewhere out there, Lone Star Holdings was gutting the house for profit. And I was here, in my own space, eating good food, and thinking about the future. For the first time in 2 years, I felt like myself again. Not the doormat daughter who could not say no. Not the victim who accepted abuse as the price of family. Just Skylar. Free, solvent, and utterly done with their bullshit. I raised my wine glass in a silent toast to Aunt Alice, wherever she was. I hope you understand, I thought. I hope you would have done the same thing. The city lights twinkled back at me, beautiful and indifferent, and I smiled. 4 months have drifted by since that fateful night, carrying the past away like leaves on a river. I am sitting on the balcony of my apartment in Dallas, watching the sunset paint the skyline in shades of amber and rose gold. The air here is different, quiet, peaceful. No sound of golf clubs clanking against the garage wall at 6 in the morning. No raised voices demanding I make dinner or do their laundry. Just the gentle rustling of wind through the leaves of my newly planted rose bushes. They are arranged in large ceramic pots along the balcony railing, 6 of them, each one carefully selected to mirror Aunt Alice's original garden. David Austin roses, mostly. The same pale pink Eden climbers, the same deep crimson Munstead woods. I water them every morning, checking for new blooms with the same reverence Aunt Alice used to show. It is not the same as having 3 acres of garden space, but it is mine, all mine. The studio is thriving. I used a significant portion of the house proceeds, $200,000, to open Bennett Design Co. in downtown Dallas. Glass walls, exposed brick, standing desks with dual monitors. I hired 2 junior designers and a project manager. We specialize in UX/UI for healthcare apps, and we are already booked out 3 months in advance. Turns out, when you are not spending 16 hours a day being someone's unpaid servant, you have the energy to build something remarkable. My phone buzzes the new iPhone 15 Pro, the one that holds my actual life. It is a text from Roman Thorne, my attorney. Thought you would want to know. Arthur called my office again today. 5th time this month, still threatening to sue Lone Star Holdings. I heard their legal team sent him a cease and desist for harassment. He has no legal standing. The house was yours. The sale was legal. Have a good evening, Skylar. I smile, setting the phone down on the wrought iron table. I can picture Dad's face, red and sweating, probably calling from whatever cheap cell phone he managed to scrape together. The irony is not lost on me. According to my former neighbor Carol, who still texts me updates because she is delightfully nosy, my parents are renting a 3rd-floor walk-up in a run-down apartment complex on the east side of Austin. No elevator. 3 flights of stairs. Every single day. Apparently, the money they made from selling those few bottles of Italian wine, the Brunello and Barolo they had been so proud of, purchased with money they didn't earn, only covered about 3 months of rent. After that ran out, they had to dip into what little savings they had left from Dad's failed retirement fund, the same fund they had decimated with their entrepreneurial ventures and golf club memberships. Carol told me Arthur's knee is worse now. All those stairs. He uses a cane, she said. Kate does all the grocery shopping, because he can't make the climb more than once a day. I should feel guilty. I wait for it, that gnawing sensation in my stomach that used to come whenever I disappointed them. It does not come. Instead, I stand and walk to the railing, running my fingers over the soft petals of a newly opened bloom, Aunt Alice's roses. Her legacy, continued in a different form. I hope you understand. I whisper to the wind, to her memory, to whatever part of her might still be watching. I did not sell your house to hurt them. I sold it to save myself. The house was never just brick and mortar. It was a trap, a golden cage they had built around me with manipulation and guilt. Aunt Alice didn't leave me that property so I could become my parents' retirement plan, their live-in maid, their punching bag when things didn't go their way. She left it to me so I could have freedom, security, a foundation to build my own life. And that is exactly what I did. I water the roses as the sun disappears below the horizon, the city lights beginning to twinkle like stars. Tomorrow I have a consultation with a potential client, a startup developing mental health apps. The irony makes me laugh. My parents lost everything that day. The free house, the free servant, their reputation among their country club friends who undoubtedly heard about their sudden downgrade. I lost a house, but I gained my life back. And looking at these roses, breathing in air that does not taste like resentment and obligation. I know Aunt Alice would approve. Let me ask you. Was selling the house sight unseen to a corporate shark to get rid of them quickly wise or foolish? Did the act of shoving me in front of my client deserve this level of punishment?